Good morning. Hope you guys can all hear me. All right. Good morning, all. Not sure if you guys are going to be able to talk to me, but you can certainly use the chat to say hi. We'll give it a few more minutes to see if anybody else is going to show up. I have 3 minutes to 11, and we'll start exactly at 11, I guess. And we'll get going in about 30 seconds.
Hey, Luke, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Thanks, Thomas. We got about 15 people on board.
Call. I have a hard time kicking you off here.
I'm already in the meeting and running. We're good. All right, folks. Well, it's about that time, so what I'll do is I'll get started and start chatting with you. This is you just turn that back on. That'll be good. This is a little lunch and learn we put together. That's best practices for how to build an Insight Explorer spreadsheet job. It's something that we're not going to try and cover how to build the best tools, how to get the best lighting and optics, how to prove that your application is going to be viable for the long term. This is all about how do you craft the code in this spreadsheet environment. As a little bit of background, I've been doing machine vision since about the year 2000. I was an end user for a long time, Fortune 500 company. I actually ran their program for all machine vision across all their different business units. Now I do this full time at ACS. ACS is a Southwest regional integrator and distributor. I'm assuming most of you guys know who we are since you've been to our website, and that's how you get to sign on. I'm going to go for about 2 hours. We'll take a break right in the middle. I'm going to run through about 7 or 8 short topics on how I think you should best develop an application and build it so that it's usable and valuable and people understand it. I assume that everybody has done some stuff in Spreadsheet. They kind of know what machine vision is. They know how to get around and how to write applications. If you don't, you'll probably be a little lost in some of this thing, but it still might be valuable because I think some of the concepts are useful no matter what you're doing. I have put up, and I think you can find in your app a place to download the files. I've given you a copy of this PowerPoint and a copy of sample images, the ones I'm going to be using as we build stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So here's my agenda, and a lot of this is may seem like apple pie and mom, but it's about keeping your code clean, keeping it formatted in a way that somebody can understand it, and we'll talk about that over and over again. We'll talk about consistency in your design, the way you build things, this function that they have called cell tracing, which is probably the best thing since sliced bread. We'll take about 10 minutes for a break, come back, answer some questions. We'll talk about how to clean up the code and keep the complexity hidden, so not out there and not confusing people. How to keep the stuff modular and linking things together so you don't basically go crazy when you're trying to write code. So first site up, it's a clean up as you go concept. So Cognex is really good about dropping data out of all their tools right onto your spreadsheet for you. And when it does that, it basically sometimes looks like a hot mess. So we're going to go through and we're going to tell you that, hey, if you're going to do something in here, clean up what you don't need, get rid of the stuff that's not valuable to the end user. Now, this may seem like it would take a lot of time as you're doing your application development, but to be honest with you, I think it slows me down a little bit and lets me think about, this is what I'm trying to accomplish, and here's how I'm going to accomplish it. I need this, I don't need that. So first demo. So I've got a blank vision job sitting here. I've got my Cognex block, which is a standard thing we use in all the training courses. And I've got a series of images in which this thing moves around. So the first thing I'm going to do is drop down a tool. I'm going to type a histogram tool. So here's my extract histogram tool. I choose a region. It's standard stuff. And when I do that, I get this. So here's the tool I placed, and it gave me a threshold, contrast, count of pixels that are darker than the threshold, brighter than the threshold, and the average. Well, let's say in my application, all I care about is the average. These add no value to me, but they're there. I'm going to throw a second tool down. I think I want an edge tool. Yep. Fine line. I'm going to throw my region down, maybe here. going to drop that down, and I get these. I get a row and column of one endpoint, row and column of the other endpoint, and a score. Things really get fun if I do something that has multiple pieces of data. For example, if I want to use a blob tool, say to find those characters, not as letters, but just as dark stuff on a light background, I'd come in and say, okay, my blob is white, my background is, or sorry, blob is black, my background is white, and set my region. So I drop it down. Actually, let me delete this because I didn't do what I wanted to do. Here's my tools. My blob is black. And I'm going to come up here and say, hey, I want to find 6 of them. So my tools found those 6 blobs in there. But now it's given me an array of data for all the things that I could, not all of them, but some of the features that I could go find in here. I've got a row and column of the centroid. I've got the angle of a long axis. I've got a color, which doesn't make a lot of sense in, well, it's a 0 or 1 for black and white. I've got a score, which doesn't make a lot of sense until you're doing 3D. I've got an area, elongation, number of holes in it, a perimeter, and spread. Turns out maybe in this application, all I want to do is say, how many are there, right? Not where are they, but how many are there? So all of this turns into stuff that I just don't need. So I'm going to take these tools, I'm going to move them down here in the, I'll put them down here at row 30, let's say. And just to make things a little clear here, I'm going to draw a box around all this junk in there. And now I'm going to do it the way I'm going to suggest to you. So I'm going to type in my extract histogram tool. No. Okay. And I'm going to choose my region. I'm going to drop the tool down in there. And I'm going to go look at all this stuff that I put in there and say, all I really care about is the mean. So I'm going to take these out. I'm going to Control X, Control V, so copy and paste. And now here's the tool. I'll make this so you can see it. Here's the tool. And I've got this rather than that. Likewise, find line tool. Put it in there. And maybe I only need the row. Column. So if I'm, let's say, for example, I'm just looking at this position over here. That's the column. So I'll just get rid of the pieces that I want. And you know what? Might be valuable to keep the score for somebody to use later. And I'm going to move it down, highlight it so you can see it. Actually, I would move these guys over to here. And there's my edge. Blob. Tell it to find 6. Oops. Set my region. And tell it I need to see a black blob. Okay, and all I want to know is the count here. So all this stuff is not useful. But I know the blob tool can give me a count of something. So here's another little trick to you. The help file is really good in Insight. So if I hit F1 for help and do blob, I take the extract blob tool. If I pull this tool up, you can scroll down in here, and it gives me all the setup things. Down the bottom, it says, it shows me all of the pieces that I can get out of it. And one of these things is this, get n found, returns the number of blobs found. So I can use this help file to show me what I could do. So if I do a get n found of the blob, I get the number 6. I found 6. So for this set of tools in there, this is useful. This is what I want to show my end user, my customer, myself. And it took very little time compared to this, and gives me something nice and clean, easy to understand. And where this becomes really valuable is if I have somebody trying to troubleshoot this chunk of code in there, they really care about this average. They don't care about the score necessarily. Maybe they do. They care about the column, but not the rows. They don't need any of this information. In order to figure out if it's working, they just would have to come down here and say, hey, do I have values in line 5? So difficult to use, difficult to understand. Instead, it takes very little bit of time to figure out what do you really care about and keeps your code nice and clean. Okay, so the next piece of this cleanup, let's see. So let's say we're gonna go ahead and build use an edit region tool to allow the user to move the region around for, we'll just do it for my blob tool. So in the blob tool, we've got our region set up here. I just graphically laid it down. But I'm going to put a new tool in there. It's called the edit region, which gives me a region where I can click on this box, set the region that I want, and I can do this online when I'm running. And then I will reference this blob to the region. I'm going to make this visible. But when I drop the edit region down, it gives me the row, column, high, wide, angle, and curve of the region. Again, way stuff that I don't need because I'm going to go edit or reference this region directly. So I'll delete those. I'm actually going to edit this guy, and I'm going to call this blob region. And I'm going to move these over. And in the blob tool, you've got a piece here that says, hey, give me an external region. I can reference it to that region. Now I have a blob tool where I can grab this region and move it around in there. And what's nice about still in the cleanup concept in there is all of those other cells in there that provide no value to the user are gone. The blob tool references the blob region, and I get a count of the blobs which I wanted to do. So I've got 3 cells here where I had this many plus 10 or 12 more for the region tool. I'm going to move these guys over because we'll leave them up and we'll be using those later. So in a concept of use it or lose it, if it's not valuable to people, get rid of the code. From history and from trying to troubleshoot people's code in there, you start looking at stuff and cells might have errors in there. They might have values in there that don't make any sense. And just looking at the sheer number of cells in there, it helps the next guy when you can show them, here's what's going on. Everything you leave in the sheet's got to have some value to it. If not, hide it and get rid of it. Doesn't mean it has to be used for other calculations. For example, if we go back to this edge tool, all I might need is this column, but it might be valuable for the user to be able to see the score to know if his edge is close to its threshold. So might use it, but again, decide if there is value in there and get rid of anything that's unnecessary. So here's my next comment, and we started this a little bit, is you can do a lot of formatting in the spreadsheet, and we're going to do that formatting in a way that helps the user understand. So the format for understanding says, I'm going to point you at what's important. I'm going to point you at the things that make sense. I'm going to get rid of stuff that just might make things confusing. And so here's what we're going to do. These are my rules. This is a template that I put together, and I've got out, I'm going to call it thousands of vision systems. And here's what I do. When Cognex, switch to a sheet to show you, when Cognex drops a number down, it puts it down with 3 decimal places. It doesn't matter whether that's a pass-fail, a Boolean, or an integer, or a floating point, or what. It always gives you 3 decimal places. In this case, this is a blob index. It is an integer that says blob 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in there, but it's got all those guys down there. So the first thing I would do is say, hey, look, all these guys are integers, no decimal places. Okay. Let's say I come up here and I want to do a pass-fail that says if I have 6 blobs, I'm going to pass. So I'm going to say, I'm going to put a label up here that says pass, and I'm going to say if this equals 6, then 1, else 0. So I'm going to do that as a Boolean in there. Again, there's my 3 decimal places. I'm going to take this Boolean, make it black and white so we can see it, and I'm going to make it centered and bold. So now I can look at these 2 pieces, actually these 3 pieces. I have a score up here, it gives me what looks like a floating point. I have an integer, is right justified, and no decimal places, and that will only be a 0 or 1. That's my formatting for a bool in there. So I got that, I got center bold. Then I gone in and just said, hey, if I'm talking about pixel positions or something, 1 decimal places, scores might be 2 decimal places. So you can go through these things and you can say, okay, that's going to be a score. All these guys are positions, score down here. And I don't have any bools in here. And these indices are integers in there. The other thing I do is I use a lot of color to help people understand what the programs are. And my one line that I give people is, hey, if it's important, if it's part of the pass-fail decision, if it's part of the inspection, and I need you to keep an eye on that, it's going to be black text on a white background. And if it's not, comments, labels, display, and this guy, even though it officially, I keep clicking on it, I shouldn't do that. Even though this officially is part of the calculations, all this is saying is, blob 0, blob 1, blob 2, blob 3. That's not something that you need to troubleshoot if the program was working an hour ago and it's not now. These indices are not important. These labels are not important to the flow of the program. So I run them this way so that you can tell these guys are the important ones and those are not. And then the other thing you can do with it is your Booleans. There's a tool called status light where you can say, I'm going to use a status light to give me maybe a red, green, or red and background. I'll talk about that in a second. But I went in there and I said, okay, look, I'm looking for blobs that are above 200 pixels in area. So I put a Boolean in here with an equation that said, is this greater than 200? Yes, and it turned that into a 1. I can take that 1 and I can run it into the status light tool and say, oh, these are big ones versus little ones. Let's do that. So here's my tools again. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fix this formatting. Black, Cognex yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. Just to make it more readable, we're going to do this. Actually going to move it over one. I'm going to give this block a title. We're going to call this one Edge. Histogram. These guys as my title block, I'm actually going to reverse those. Oh, this is yellow. So now I've gone through and I've given you a title block that tells me I'm looking for a histogram. That's the average. And just call this Y pause, just because col 0 doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Here's my score. Here's my pass. Now I'm going to go ahead and 0. Nope, backwards, isn't it? These guys need to be integers. Again, if I want to find the area, I happen to know it's called get area, but I could look it up in tool. So I say get area of this blob. Comma index 0. Now, we all know from Excel, you have to make that an absolute. And I'll copy this down to there. I'm going to take these down in 1 decimal place, make them black and white. And here's all my areas. So I got to mark that. Okay. So is it big? If this is greater than 200, comma 1, comma 0. That gives me a Boolean. It'll look like a Boolean. Less than. Greater than. I can now copy this down. And we'll type in this status light. With the status light, I can have labels. It's big, small. Okay, so the status light will be a 1. If it's positive, I'll get this. If it's 0, I get that. If it's negative, it'll give me that. Now, I never expect to see this go negative, because all I'm going to do is reference the cell next to it, which is a Boolean. I got to have something in there. So on this thing, I'm going to choose dark green for big. I'm going to choose red for small. And I'm going to pick a color that you should never see. Let's just go to the regular magenta. Oops color. So when I put this in there, I'll get text. I'll get, oh, I didn't reference it, did I? I'm going to take this and reference it next door. So now I should say big, small, or oops. It'll be dark green, red, or magenta. And I'll copy them down. And we get those. Okay. Now, the other thing I can do to help clean this sheet up is the cell comments, I think, are a very valuable tool. So I used a cell up here that said, hey, this is pass, and I put a 1 in there. I could go right click and insert a cell comment and say pass if count equals 6, 1 equals pass, 0 equals fail. And when I click that in there, now when you hover over it, you'll get that entire block of text. So not only can I just say, hey, this is the pass bit, but I can tell you if I want a 1 equal to pass and a 0 equal to fail. I can tell you some other things in there. You can write all kinds of comments in there. And when you have a comment in there, you'll get a little red tick mark in the corner that will tell people that if you hover over it, you'll get an answer. So I come in here and I could say this is a left edge of block. And the histogram is just a waste of time, but I could do something that says or something, you know, say if your score is less than this, or if it's different than what you're supposed to see, you can throw all kinds of really good information in there. Go back and take a look at where we sat here. So that's using a status light for color indicators. The other thing I'll tell you is when you are using color in your sheets, and this will be really, really powerful in the next piece in here. When you're using color in there, you want to follow normal conventions, right? Green is good, red is bad. That's kind of used everywhere, and yellow is abnormal. Choose a color that means something is wrong, an oops color. For me, that's magenta. I don't know why. And then you choose a color on your screen graphics and stuff that is what you would call dead text. So let's say I wanted to take this sheet and we'll do I'm just going to do a plot circle here. And no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do just a circle tool. Let's say I just wanted to put something on the screen. No, I can't. I don't want to do that. If I wanted to let me use a plot circle because I can get colors out of it. If I wanted to put a circle here on the screen that tells people, where this tool belongs in there. So I'll just run this thing and say this is just like a reference mark, maybe not this. I want to throw a reference point down there that says, hey, place the C in this hole. Actually, it should be a square. Let me do this. Plot region. I want a dead graphic in here, a non-moving graphic in here that shows people where to drop this block. I'll make this graphic on the screen so that the block fills it up. Waiting patiently. And I'll choose a color that does not mean pass or fail or anything, and that might just be the cyan color. So now I've got a piece of graphic on the screen. This could be like a setup, match mark, or something like that, something that's a reference point in there. It's not going to move. It's not part of the inspection. It's just a piece of graphic in here that's good for you to help you understand something. The last piece in the coloring piece and and this is something I learned when I did a lot of work for making good HMIs. And what the best HMI does for you, the most valuable HMI, draws your attention using color, shape, or something else to issues that need to be addressed. And otherwise, it just says go away. So where everybody is really hot on red and green, green is good, red is bad. What's more valuable as an HMI, and this actually comes from aircraft design, is if you're good, it's a background. And if you're bad, it's going to pop out at you. So a good HMI will say, here's what you need to look at. And if everything is hunky-dory and it's running fine, your HMI is kind of a backgroundy thing. So if I were going to go back to this program and say, maybe big is what I want out of this, I would probably want to take this guy and say, hey, your pass condition could actually be black. And then what do you get? You get something that looks like this. And this draws your eye to index 4 and 5, which are small, and the bigs are in the background. Now this is a hard fight. It really is with most people. If you're going to go out and say, I'm not going to give you green lights on the screen. People are going to flip out. However, the most you can do to draw attention only to the things that need help, the better. So I don't usually expect to win that fight, but I try it anyway. Okay, so the next piece of formatting is consistency. So, and this is from an HMI from a piece of work that I did. The left side is the HMI that I found when I showed up. Okay, some of these things are buttons you could push. Some of these things are modes that are displayed from the line. Some of them are labels, but it's not really easy to understand. So in this case, that's a start. That's a push button. The intention horn's a push button. I don't rightly know. I believe this is just a display. That will pull up a screen. This says that your line is running. And I'll tell you what, when you're standing next to the line, you know it's running. It's just making a ridiculous amount of noise, and this HMI is right there. So where does that provide value? And this one, the label for the fault is in red and always in red. The fault message itself is pure in black and white. So it really, it's hard to do. And after a lot of work, we took this and turned it into that. And what we did was, I think, pretty obvious. That's a button, that's a button, that's a button, that's a button, that's a button. Buttons are always bold, means you can push it. Live data from the line, always underlined. Anything that's abnormal is in yellow. So there's a caution up here, and there's this. Anything that's really, really bad is a red. So in this thing, I could stand back 10 feet from this display and go, I got a caution. I've got something really bad up here. But if it's running happy, these guys all just fade into the background. And this actually is the running line. This is what it looks like while it's running. And a button, in this case, that is used to fix that issue, goes yellow and basically says, press me. So if you want to fix this caution, this is the yellow button to do it. Now, we're not designing HMIs like that, but what's important is we think this thing came up, and when people hit the mode button, somebody forgot to put it in a mode that was other than no mode. And that caused an issue. And so somebody came back into the HMI and said, you know, that's important. I'm going to make that red. You know, the cause of the last stop is important. I'm going to make that red. I'm going to make this red. And you end up with, scope creep. Everything in there is important, or at one point in time. And soon you end up with this cacophony of color with just stuff going on. And so you got to fight against that. So what I recommend, what I've done here for stuff and has become a document I attach to it, is I come out with a sheet that describes my rules, my formatting rules. So this is the way it's always going to work. And I attach that as an appendix in the back of my thing. I actually follow it while I'm doing the design work. And then when you do that, the next person to come in can look at that and understand the rules, right? That's a Boolean, this is this is that, and I don't have this anarchy going on in here. Okay. So the next piece of this is a function that Cognex has got called cell tracing. I think they actually call it something else, but nobody calls it that. They all call it cell tracing. Show dependency levels, this. And what cell tracing does, it's an incredibly valuable tool where when you turn this on, you can see where this data is used and where it comes from. So if I click on a cell in there, I get a blue line on the source of the data, and then I get green lines on the destinations. So if I look at I'll go up here and look at this one. If I look at this integer, or let's say I'll start with this. Okay, the word big, this status light, where does it come from? It comes from that cell. That cell comes from that cell. This cell comes from the blob and the index. Okay, where's the blob come from? Oh, it comes from the region and cell A0, the inspection. So I can trace this thing all the way back. Now you can turn on a second level. You can actually have it so it shows this and what comes before it and what comes before it. That's a don't do. Just one click, one display. And so I can come to any cell and figure out what caused it or where it's coming from and trace it all the way back. The other thing it does for me is it gives me these purple boxes around the cells that go nowhere. So if it gets to the purple box, it is not used anywhere else in the program. And so you can see that here with all these guys. They're not used anywhere in the program. This guy is used to feed all those, and it comes out. You can also grab multiple cells and show where things are going. And I'll show you where that comes into play. If I purposefully mess up a cut and paste in here, first thing I do is I see a purple box around that, which tells me that's not used. I know it should be. And if I swing down to this thing, I grab all these guys, I can see that this number one is going into here, or I could grab them from over here. Say, okay, look, this number one goes into that cell. That just looks different than all the others. So I can come back to this and I can make the edit. Now, also in the cell tracing concept in there, if I have a formula for something, this is a good one in here. If I have a formula for this thing, you'll see when you click on up in the formula bar, it will highlight with color everything that's on the spreadsheet, and these match the cells here. So I can see this is coming from the blob, that's the blue one, and the index, which is the orangey one. And I can just grab this and graphically move it to where it needs to be. So the cell tracing is a fantastic tool to help you drive to understand that everything is hooked to where it needs to be. And we'll continue to use that through the rest of the little demo here. Okay. We're actually moving through some of this stuff a little quickly. So let's do this. Let's take a quick 10 minutes. It is 11:45. And be back at 11:55. 11:55. And please come back with some questions. In the meantime, you can type them into the text boxes, the chat box, and I'll try and answer some questions on the pieces that we've done so far. All right. I apologize. I don't have any music to put on in the background, but take a break, and I'll see everybody at 11:55. All right. So we're back. And yeah, that's my Mr. Science Theater 3000 graphic at the bottom. If you haven't seen it, it's weird, but it's very funny. Okay, so the questions, there's two, I'll call them 2.5 questions in there because the two of them are related. There's speed. So the question is, do required cells, does that improve the speed of the application? And to answer that, yes, there is a tool in here that helps you figure out the speed of execution and stuff. If you go in a sensor to the job profiler, this profile job tab in there, what you'll get is a list of all of the cells in your app. And if you acquire an image and run it, 1 second. Image, no, sensor, job. You run the image in here. This thing tells you a lot of stuff about your job. This tells you the order of execution of the cells. Here's your cell number, the result, like did it execute properly or not, and the amount of time it took to go, and the expression. So if I sort this by time in milliseconds, my extract blob took about 0.1 milliseconds in there. Okay. When I come down to the these guys, so these are all the cells. It's get angle, get color. These are all the cells off the blob tool that's down the bottom in the A50 region. They're taking unmeasurably small time to get. So less than a microsecond in there. So does it? Yeah, really. But does it? Is there any real significant effect? And what you'll see in general is the tools that are working on the image, the extract blob, the extract edge, the extract hist, those will take a measurable amount of time. But when you're in the vision data access, you're just saying, give me the threshold off this tool. Give me the row on the result. Not actually finding things, but getting values out of it. They get really, really, really small time in there. So it's less about that. It's more about being able to show people, what's important in there. So yeah, all this stuff, you could leave it in there. It won't affect anything at all. That's a speed monitoring tool, and that should answer the questions of it's not that important. So yeah, if you want to do enabling, disable certain tools from a PLC, there's a tool in here that you should see that's called cell states. So if I right click on a tool and I come down here to cell state, this cell could be enabled, disabled, or enabled based on a condition. Okay. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to make a block of, I'm going to say run hist, and I'm going to say run edge, and I'm going to say run letters. Okay. I'm going to make a status light here. That's an enable status light. Actually, I'm going to put, I'm just going to put a Boolean in here for right now. White and black, centered bold, 1, 0, 0, 1. No decimal places. Sure you're centered. Status light. Reference to this guy. It is enabled. Oops. Finish. And oops. And enabled is going to be green. Disabled. Well, you know what? It's not a problem if it's disabled. It's just different. We'll call it yellow. And this is my magenta because that's, oops. I copy and paste these down to there. Now I've got these three. Okay. So let's say I only want to run the histogram tool if this enabled is turned on. I right click, cell state, conditionally enabled, if that. I'm going to run the edge tool, cell state, conditionally enabled, that, and the blob tool, conditionally enabled, off that. Okay, and here's where cell tracing comes in. Now, another piece of cell tracing is I'm on this blob tool. This blob tool gets region and it gets off the image. And then you see it's got this dotted line from that Boolean. That's how it shows a cell state. The other thing you can see when you see a cell state, it's up here too. It says if C5. Now, you can't invert the cell state. 1 is run it, 0 is don't, and that's basically all you've got. So you have to invert it, or you have to get it to the point where 1 is go and 0 is false. And actually, I can change this into a, for now, I'm going to change this into a checkbox. Call it do. So I can edit those. And so now I can turn these guys on or off. 1 second, sneeze. And we're back. So I could use these as a checkbox to say enable or don't enable these tools. Now that too will, when they're disabled, they won't run. So they will, you know, affect your speed a little bit. In general, like I said, for small tools, small images, it should not be that big of a deal. But if I grab these 3 enabled cells, I can look at, here's where the cell states go with my dotted lines in there. Now, if you're going to do this from PLC, you could do, you could send a word down. So let me put in edit integer. This could be 0 to 7, right? And what is the, there's a mathematical tool. Yeah, bit end. There we go. So here's how I do cell state enabling stuff from a, now I want this goes like this and this. Actually, what I could do, I'll put these guys back. Let me do this. I could come in here and I could say bit and this comma 0. And we can go look this up in the tool, and the bitwise and says, hey, if bitwise, converting this into a bit, are these the same? So this says if bit 0 is that 1? Yeah. Okay. When I did this, notice it did not get in the right spot, so I can fix it there. And copy and paste it here. Move this block to the thing. Here's another valuable piece of the when you have cell tracing on. You see how I have a question mark in here now? The question mark says, hey, you're using a value in here. It's not, doesn't have the right type of data in it. I'm using a blank for an integer. So 1, 2, 3. This is going to be a 3. So what would I do to cell state stuff? I'd bring in a table here, or I'd bring in my PLC value to an integer. That's why I would send it from a PLC. I would then run that into a table of enable bits, and ultimately I would want it to say have an enabled, disabled, green light, red light, or whatever, and then say, hey, if I send a 1, I'm going to run tool 1. I didn't do this right. Do not delete that because I didn't do it right. But anyway, if this tool's on, I turn this bit on, that bit's enabled. That enable comes down to the histogram tool. Okay, before we move on, are there, let's see, got that, got that, got that. Are there any other questions that we might want to cover, or are there any follow-ups on these? So, profile job gives you the timing stuff. Having vision data access cells, these ones that are gets and get information out off of the tool, are relatively fast and cheap. And so it's not all that important to clean them up unless you're running ridiculously fast. And you can bring in an integer, select it up into the bits, use those bits as cell states for tools. Okay, moving on. So the next piece of this thing is embedding formula into the tools. So one of the things people tend to do is they'll take a region tool or an edit region, and they'll have the row, column, high, wide, and area, curve, and they'll leave those on the sheet, and then they'll use those into the tools. That's the easier way to do it, but it doesn't help you with trying to clean things up. And then we'll talk about plotting, booleans and stuff, show and hide, and colors. Things, again, we're formatting for understanding. So in this case, we'll use the edge tool here. In this edge tool, when I edit the edge tool, I've got a region in there like that. Well, if I wanted to do make the region editable, I can create this thing, and this would be edge region. And I can click on this, put my region where I need it to be. Okay. This gives me row, column, high, wide, and angle, and curve. I can take my simple way, what most people would do. You can actually click into here, click into the first cell, the row, and go grab all these guys across there. And now it's filled them all in, and I'm referencing this off row, column, high, wide, angle, and curve. And if I move the tool, it'll move my edge finding tool with it. Okay. Now, what I would suggest is I really don't want, even though I need these, I don't necessarily want them on the screen. So if you look at these cells, this is get row, get col, get high, get wide, get angle, get curve. I would suggest get into here, take this, tell it we're going to create a function, and just do get row of region like that. Now, here's a way you make this really quick and easy. Copy that, and I type them all in like this. That gives me my reference. Then I come back in here and I do, that's col, high, wide, angle. Now, the get curve is rarely used, so I'm not even going to go bring it in. And I can do it this way: get row, get col, get high, get wide, get angle. And when I do it that way, off this region tool, I'm going to get rid of all these guys. I'm going to move this stuff over. Oops. Formatting for understanding. I'm going to make this part of my job. Oops. Well, I know I can click on it. And now when I've done this, if I click on this edge tool, it references cell state off to disabled, image A0, obviously important. And the only reference line I've got is one single line to this edit region. I don't have a line to all the different parameters in it. And that's, again, it's from an understanding point of view. If I'm on this thing, it says, hey, I need the edge of the block. It's off the edit region. I can grab this and move it from there. So I'm not going to display them. I'm just going to go and grab them. Next thing I want to do, oops, put this back on, is talk about displaying stuff off of this. So let's say I want to show the position of this edge. Well, in the edge tool, I've got a parameter in here that says show the results graphic. It'll show me the green line on this thing. And I hit it. Oh, is it disabled? Yeah, now it shows me the green line. Actually, I'm going to hide this guy because he's not, I don't want him right now. So I can see this green line in there, but it's faint and it's green, it's dark green, and it's kind of hard to see. I could also tell this tool, obviously, to show me the input and results graphic. So it gives me the region and the line. But also, I don't have any control over that. That's going to be dark blue and dark green in there. So rather, I would propose we don't show anything off of this, but I do a plot line. So I'm going to do plot line, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to use the trick I just showed you, get row of edge, comma 0. And again, you would get into your vision data access to figure out comma 0, comma 1. So the get row and the get column coming out of this thing, you and there's an extra thing in here. So you can get this by dropping an edge tool down there and reading it, but it's get row of the line tool, comma 0, comma 0.0, 0.1, or 0.0, 0.0, 0.1, 0.1. Okay, so now I get in there. But now I have access to the color. So I can change this to, I don't know, yellow if I want. I can put arrows on the end or not. And that can show me where it is. I can also check the box on and off. So I'm going to just drop this here for a minute. And then I'm going to go, I'm going to come in here and put a checkbox in. Checkbox. Just generically label it show. Double click on here. And even though there's a checkbox, I can relative reference it to this guy. Now I have something that will show this and turn it off. And I can do I can change the color dynamically as well. Now, I know there's a place in the help file where you can go show what the color is. I happen to know that green is the color 8. And when you come up here, you can actually see it in the formula in there. There's an 8. This is actually the way I find the colors. And red, if I select red, it's actually color 7. So let's say I have a check, let's say I'm going to say you're going to pass if position is less than 208, then pass, otherwise fail. This gives me a Boolean. There's a fail, there's a pass, and there's 17 different ways to do this, but we'll go with the easy one, which is you get to the color, put a function in here, and then put 7 plus that. So in this case, can actually see it's 7 plus pass fail, which is going to be green. And then when I move this, it turns it red. So that's kind of a quick and dirty way to do that. Another shortcut here is if you want to pass fail, you could do this as an if statement. You can also just say put like that, and that will turn it into a Boolean. Is F14 less than 206? Yes, or 208. Okay. The other way to do this is you could put the whole color spectrum colors in here. So I'm going to turn this into an 8 and a 7, and then I'm going to take this guy and just reference it directly. So in here, the formula is go get this color that's up there, the number which will be 8 or 7, and that references off of that. And if you really wanted to hide more and more stuff, we could just copy this whole thing, go into that, go into the color, and paste it into there. And now this cell goes. So 100 different ways to get at it. And there is kind of a balance between, if I know this is going to give me a pass fail here, I probably want to bring out the pass fail, so it's pretty obvious that is pass fail, and then do the color 8 minus whatever it is, a 7 plus pass would give you that. Likewise, another reason to not use this, but to use that, is if you come into a plot tool and the plot format cells, you'll get some things down in here, including this one that says, hey, turn this into a 4 wide line, and now I can make a nice thick one in there. You could also programmatically change the arrowheads. So I have one particular app that I'm working on today where I'm measuring the center. I want to see if like this point is in the center of the image. Is it too far to the left or too far to the right? I've actually got it set up so that the arrowheads will turn. The arrowhead will turn on to the left if it's too far to the left, and the right if it's too far to the right, giving somebody an indication on the screen of where this thing needs to go. So the plot region, plot string, plot cross, all those guys are, again, all those are pretty valuable in there for being able to affect the show hide, being able to affect the color. You can actually put a name in here, so I could reference this to the tool name, and that will be whatever I've put in the tool name. Let's call this left edge. And now when it's showing, I could do that. I'm going to put the pass fail back in here and show you another nice little feature. And we're going to turn this on and say this value is less than 208, so I can get something. Actually, I'll do it right here. Control X. I'm going to do a status light. Put my formula in here. So green and bright red. Okay. This guy is going to do, I'm editing in the cell just because I'm lazy and I don't want to open it up. 7 plus pass gives me the color. And then we could say, hey, maybe, for example, I always want to show this when it fails, but if it's not failing, I don't want it on the screen. So what I could do is I could say, I could put a condition in here in the show, and you could say, or checkbox, comma, pass equals 0. Oops. So in this case, when I don't have the show checkbox on, it won't display it. This is also part of the let's keep it clean for the user. I don't show you that edge tool if it's fine. I'll only show it to you when it's bad. But for troubleshooting, I might want to turn that on so I could see it. So now it would turn red and green based on whether it's a pass fail. And then when I turn that back off again, I end up with just the show. Okay, show and hide, checkbox, show overlays. We're going to do more on the show checkbox in there. Put a space in there for when we do that. We're going to use this thing more later on, and I'll show you more. What you will notice is I always just call that show. I don't put anything custom in there, and then I can copy and paste it wherever I want. So that's why we do that. The other thing I tend to do is when I have a label in there, I usually add a semicolon and a space. And I do that so that when I just write justify it, if I just put a semicolon at the end and then write justify it, it runs it right up against the thing. So it becomes an obsessive compulsive thing. So I'd put, when I type it in there, I would go run letters, colon space, enter, and then come up here and whack on the write justify so that it gets to where it needs to be. Okay. There's a hidden complexity. I'm going to take a crack at that one. You know what that is, right? Come on. Now, I'll give you some time. Okay, linking tools together. So this is one where, and we're going to play with this using the edge tool in there. Let's say, for example, I'm going to take this edge tool and I want it to come down from the top on basically a pretty crappy edge in here. Okay, it's not the left edge, it's not the top edge. Okay, and this pass fail bit, I'm going to turn it off for right now, and it's always going to be a pass in here. So if I'm going to find this thing in here, sometimes when you throw a tool down in there, you're like, well, I really want to throw a filter on this tool and use that filter as part of my edge. So I'm going to move this guy back here to the left side here. And I'm going to put a filter in to stretch, to give myself more contrast in here. And say 30 and 60. And I'm going to put this filter up here. And that gives me a nice brighter image in there. So stretch filter does that. And if I want to hook my edge tool to it, I would, this is kind of basic stuff from the course, instead of saying use an image A0, I'm going to use image B14. Take my filter region, I'll put it like there. And my edge tool just failed. The reason it failed is, here's the region where the edge tool is. It's using the image off this filter, but the filter is not in the same spot as the edge tool. So a common solution to that would be make this filter big, cover the whole image in there. That one, though, I'll tell you, will start to cause you time issues. Let's take a look at that and see what the profiler says. I got to get an image up first. Center, profile job. Give them to me in order. Execute. Where is the filter? So my filter, again, it took 12 or 0.12 milliseconds on this small image. It's a point filter, but it did take, you know, twice as long as basically anything else in there. So in general, I mean, we don't want to be wasteful and throw the filter over large images, especially if we get to a like a 5 megapixel or a 12 megapixel camera. So I could take this image filter and hook it to the edit region. So if I do this again, get row of region, copy, paste, 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 call, high, wide, angle. Okay. Move back to the first image where my guy is in there. Now this filter will follow the edit region, which means that it will never be outside, or the edge tool will always have the image filter done. And if I wanted to create a second filter based on the first, maybe first thing I want to do is ramp it up, and then I maybe with a stretch, Maybe the second thing I want to do is use a close filter that will get rid of some of the variation in there by averaging over multiple pixels. I actually copied I did a Control C here, pasted it there. Of course, it's just failed because it's referencing this for a location. I'll click up here and I'll just move these guys all to on top of there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now this filter has the same location in it. I'll change the filter type on it to say close, I think. Yeah, close. We get 7 by 7. This filter is going to work on that filter. And now I've got that. And then my edge tool is still linked to the first filter. I can click on that and just drag it over into the second filter. And now I've got a stack of tools. I have a region that feeds a filter, feeds a second filter, which feeds an edge. All of these guys are using the exact same region, which is this edit region that I can move around. Likewise, instead of the edit region, there's a tool called just region that you could drop down, which has a row, column, high, wide angle, and curve in here, and you could put formulas into there. So, for example, if you wanted to put, actually, we could do this. Watch this. Get rid of all these things in there that are wasting my time. I'm going to put in this. I'm going to go do the get row, get col thing again. What I'm going to eventually do is create a second one of these. And 0. So my intent is to create a second edge tool. And if I do this, I'll get exactly the same one. I gotta get. Let's move this. So what I can do is I can do a region tool, and I could say, hey, this is that region plus move it over 100 pixels. And if I copy all these tools in there, Control C, Control V, I'm actually going to take this guy and put him out here. So I can copy and paste him there. And I can see from the question mark that it's the wrong position for the show. I'll move that up to there. And now I've got a second tool that will follow the first tool. When this tool moves, I've got all these guys doing the exact same thing, but 100 pixels to the right of it. So by linking all these guys together to a region tool, either edit region or just the region tool, the mathematical region tool in there, I can ensure that these will never run into an issue where this image filter is using that image, but that image is the wrong size. It's out of spec. And clean up. So that's a good thing for object linking and stuff. The other thing you could do with this, sometimes there's a, we fixture tools to other tools. So I could use this edge to find a position and use that position to reference another tool. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll do a fixture tool, or so I'll drop a fixture in there, a whole nother tool in there that is get row of found edge, like this. Okay, so we create a tool in here that takes these values in there. But then I could take this and maybe cell state it to that tool. So why would I do that? If I'm going to use this edge as a fixture tool that will send other tools to move around in there, maybe, and this happens in a lot of situations, if the edge tool fails, the fixture tool will fail as well. And then here's where that happens. So if I was using the position of that edge, that passed. I didn't do the demo right. If I was using the position of this edge, and this thing is going to pass, let's see, let's do it this way. So this tool will now fail if there's an error in there. No, count error is greater than 0. Sorry. So now every time when that tool fails, fixture fail, or when the edge fails, the pass goes low. If I've created a fixture to move these values in there and the source tool fails, I can actually keep the last fixture. So if you picture yourself an environment where you're making you're making a fixture tool to precisely position something, and sometimes the fixture tool is going to fail, but you want your other tools to say, hey, use the last known good value. That's a way of doing it. Cell state it. Off of that, you create this tool called a fixture. It has a row, a column, and an angle. And again, I wouldn't leave these guys up on the screen. I would take these guys off, and then I would use that to fixture the other tools off. So that's where we do all that kind of. That's the way we move those things around. So the last piece of this thing is the warning against spaghetti code. You've all seen it. There's stuff everywhere. It goes here to there. It goes, down to the bottom, up to the top, off to the left. You got to go get things from over here, and you just can't make heads or tail of it. But I'm a big fan of copy and paste, as you've seen. So I'm going to do a new app, and I'll show you how all this stuff comes together. So I got a second set of images over here that are just a half a dozen washers of different sizes in there. So I want to go ahead and find the inner diameter of 6 different washers, let's say. So here's how this whole thing goes soup to nuts from the beginning. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take myself a set of cells. I'm going to format them all as background. And then I'm going to go, I don't know, call this tool 1, and I'm going to do edit region. I'm actually going to tell these guys they can move it, they can resize it. You can't turn it or rotate it. I'm just locking down things that I don't think people should need. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to say your region's always going to be this big. I'm even going to go in here one more level and say, thou shalt not. You can move this, but you can't change the size, rotate it, or bend it. I'm going to get rid of all the junk. I'm going to edit this guy one more time and say your name is going to be off of tool 1. This is important to the job, so I get black and white. So here's tool 1. I'm going to do a blob to try and find the kind of the center. I'm going to do a circle tool in there. I want the blob first to find the center of this. I'm going to tell it, hey, you're going to be a black blob on a white background. I'm going to tell it you cannot be up against the boundary. So, and it didn't find a blob. I think I have to give it a manual threshold in here. I think a threshold of about 30 will give me a blob. Okay, get rid of the junk. Format for understanding. Now I want the center of this blob. So I'm going to just create a point here, and that point is going to be the row of the first blob you found. Oops. And the column. Here's my point. We'll do a plot point over here. I'm going to make this dark green. Now I'm going to make it bright green. You know what? Let's make it white. No, don't change. Do the right thing. And this is the tool 1 name. And of course, I need a couple more spots in there. Check box. The name show. And again, cheating because I know where that parameter is. This is going to reference that checkbox to show. So now that gives me a green box with the tool 1 name on it. Okay, the plot is unimportant, the show is unimportant, therefore these three are important. Now, in order to do a circle tool, I need to give it, let's do a fine circle. Okay, so the position of this circle tool has to be, I need an X and a Y for the center of the annulus. So I can do get row of the point and get col of the point. Inner radius of, say, 10. See what that looks like. Outer radius of 50. And now we see this edge tool. And here's my get radius. That's important. I care about that. I don't care about the score. And I'm going to call this radius.
Hey, Lou, just wanted to remind you we're under 5 minutes to go here left in our webinar time frame. And anybody with last minute questions, if you feel so bold, feel free to unmute yourself and jump in and ask a question, or feel free to type it in the chat mode.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, good call, and I apologize. Well, all I'm going to do now is just show you that when I make this modular like this, I can put a bunch of them down there. I can move that to there, move this to here, and all of the other tools are going to follow it. And more importantly, if I messed up something in this edge tool in here, if I went and edited this tool, say maybe I don't want normalized score on, now I can just take this and copy, paste, 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 and they all work the same. So back to the wrap. Allows you to fix one thing at a time. And I guess we're up to the end, which says, I love this. I will use my best practices. Make it clean and modular, make it consistent, embed stuff, link stuff, and do this as you develop. And I hope you saw at the end, as I was working through that job in there to do that, I was looking at each piece, making it right, making it work, and then copy the whole thing down over and over and over again. Question, will we be able to get a recording of this? I assume this is recording, and if so, we'll put up a link to it. The PowerPoints are there, the tools are there, the PowerPoint's got my email on there, so you can do that as well. So yeah. Other questions? I do hope this was helpful for folks. I would encourage you to drop me a note and let me know what you think was good or bad, or you know, needs help. And then we can share more information.
Very good. Thank you
All right.
so much, Lou. We're going to wind down here. And yes, this will be recorded, or this was recorded and will be available on our website. And just get with your local account manager and they can quickly navigate you to the pages where these are posted. Thank you so much for everybody's time.
All right. Thank you much. Have a good one.